Good evening. We'd like to call the special meeting / rescheduled regular meeting of the Hebron Board of Education to order for Thursday, August 5th, 2021. If we could have a roll call.
Joe Zuzel, board member.
Tom Baird, superintendent.
Heather Pettit, board chair.
Amanda Veneziano, board member. Alex Michael, board member. Caitlin O'Leary, business manager. And Rose, who's assistant food superintendent.
Joe?
Joe Margetti, board member.
All right. Thank you. So if we could all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you. All right, so next on the agenda is a board member resignation from Keith Pettit. So I'll read his resignation, and what the board has to do is just formally accept the resignation. And after that, I will notify the town clerk tomorrow of the vacancy. And then it is posted for 35 days. People that are interested, interested parties can express their interest to the Board of Selectmen, and then they appoint after that time at their next regular scheduled meeting. So, let me read his resignation. Dr. Baird and Chairwoman Pettit, it is with great regret that I must inform you of my resignation from the Hebron Board of Education. I have recently accepted the position of Fiscal Administrative Manager for the Connecticut Teachers Retirement Board, which acts as the CFO for the Connecticut Teachers Retirement System. Due to my responsibilities in this position, there would be a conflict of interest under Connecticut General Statute 5-266A-B, State Reg 5-266A-1A-2E, for me to continue as a Hebron Board of Ed member. Thank you both for your guidance during my time on the board. Your experience and insight have changed my views on several occasions and have expanded my understanding of the Connecticut elementary education system. I wish the board well in their future endeavors. So, to that effect, I would like to thank Mr. Pettit for his time on the board, the volunteer position, and several hours, and he worked really hard as the policy committee chair with Dr. Baird to really revamp almost all of our policies, which were really old and needed to be done. So I thank him for his time and all his volunteer work. So it's not a formal vote, but I do have to ask if you accept. So Joe Zuzel, do you accept?
I accept.
I accept. I accept.
I accept.
All right.
Joe?
So
Joe Margetti.
oh, Joe
I
Margetti.
accepted that.
Thank you, Joe. Sorry. All right. So his resignation is accepted, so I will send that tomorrow to the town clerk and notify her that there's a vacancy on the board. So next on the agenda is the election of officer. Because Mr. Pettit was the board secretary, we now have a vacancy for board secretary. So I would like to open the nominations and see if there are any nominations for board secretary at this time.
I would like to nominate Amanda Veneziano.
You accept the nomination?
I do.
All right. Are there any other nominations?
Is there a second?
Oh, I'm sorry, is there a second?
Second.
Ally, second. Thank you. Are there any other nominations? Any other nominations? Any other nominations? All right, so we now close the nominations. So I will do a roll call vote to a motion to nominate Amanda Veneziano as secretary to the Board of Education.
Yep. Alex Michael, yes. Amanda Veneziano, abstain.
Heather Pettit, yes. Aye.
Joe Zuzel? Yes.
Joe Margetti?
Joe Margetti, aye.
All right, it's unanimous.
Chair Pettit. So in December, when you did the second motion, you also had somebody make a motion to then close nominations and appoint, and had a second for that as well. If you want.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, you want me to
So you had a motion to.
close nominations, so now we have to
nominate.
motion to
to close nominations and appoint. It's two separate motions.
All right,
Motion to close
sorry.
nominations.
And appoint.
Oh, that's the second, right?
Oh, well.
So you got-
So first we have to vote on it, so.
You have to have a motion
All
to
right,
nominate.
so motion to close nominations.
Got it.
Joseph,
Motion to close nominations.
Second.
No, now we have
To
to vote.
close,
We close, so we have to
Roll
vote
call.
on
first, second, so she's first, roll call.
She voted, but she put a second on, so.
Yeah. Oh, okay, then aye.
And Joe Margandis?
Aye.
All right, so nominations are closed.
Not something we do every day.
Motion to appoint.
Hardly ever.
Motion to appoint.
Amanda
Amanda
Veneziano.
Veneziano as secretary.
Second.
All right. Joe Margandis?
Aye.
Amanda Veneziano, abstain. Heather Pettit, aye. Motion passes. All right, again, thank you.
Thank
Welcome again, as secretary.
My pleasure.
You can begin right now.
Got it.
Thank you, Amanda.
No problem.
All right, so next on the agenda, I have discussion and possible action on board meeting protocols and procedures. So this is in regard to some of the things we spoke about at our board retreat. In order to promote a more harmonious working relationship among board members, I make a motion to add the following parliamentary procedures concerning meeting conduct. The chair will call on board members by name who wish to speak during any meeting before the board. Board members will indicate by raise of hand if they wish to address the board or superintendent. Board members will not interrupt another board member who has the floor. A board member may only speak on items on the agenda unless a motion is made during a regular meeting only to add an item to the agenda. The agenda item may only be added by 2/3 vote of the majority of members present and voting. The board comment portion of the agenda will primarily be used for celebrations, congratulatory wishes, expressions of appreciation, and student staff board highlights. It will not be used for additional time to discuss items which were previously acted upon earlier in the meeting or to discuss new items not on the agenda, as such discussions could run afoul of the board's legal obligations to fairly apprise the public of all business to be transacted. Board members will be mindful to be respectful and to follow the board's ethics policy concerning all business that comes before the board. Decorum, avoidance of personalities and debate, and respect for opposing viewpoints will be an expectation for all. As a matter of form, the board chair will call all meetings to order and determine when to call meeting adjournments. The board chair reserves the right to adjourn without motion. So most of these are all Robert's rules anyway, but I just felt it was important. And so I'd ask for a motion just for you to accept, I guess is the best way to say it, those parliamentary procedures.
So moved.
All right.
Second.
Second. All right, all in favor? I'll do a roll call. Oh, you can do a roll call now.
Discussion.
Oh, sorry, discussion. Is there any discussion?
Yeah, I, being where I am right now, I just thought of this. We should at some point come up maybe with an addendum to discuss how, when we're calling in, how that's gonna play out. It's a little tough for you to see when someone wants to make a comment if we're remote.
Yeah, that's a very good point. So we can do that later on. I think for tonight, Joe, if there's a pause or if you want to text me, I'll try to check and call on you.
Got it. It just occurred to me.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. All right, you want to do a roll call?
Absolutely. Alice Weidel? Amanda Veneziano, aye.
Heather Pettit, aye.
Joe Zuzell, aye.
Joe Margaitis?
Joe Margaitis, aye.
Motion passes.
All right, motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much.
Who was the second?
Amanda.
Joe Zuzell?
Joe Zuzell.
Thank you.
All right, so next on the agenda is public comment. Public comments. The Hebron Board of Education values the public comment period as it represents an opportunity for members of the public to express their views to the board on matters within the board's authority. Procedurally, public comments will be limited to 3 minutes per person, and citizens will be asked to identify themselves. All comments must be directed toward the board and not to any individual board member or individual member of the administration. The board and the administration will not respond to questions or engage in dialogue during the public comment period. The board and the administration will determine when and how to address questions that arise during the public comment period. So I know this evening we have people here, and I will call on you to speak. Okay, so I know. We also received several emails that with folks asking to have their emails read into the record tonight. Because we received so many, I have randomly handed them out to board members. So we will take turns reading some of those. So I can begin, and then I will call on people who are here to speak. I know Ms. DeGray and Ms. Egan are here. And so if you have their emails, I'm sorry, if you're here, if you'd rather speak than have your email read, just raise your hand and then we won't.
I have emailed Sean, you were sure she would attend,
Okay,
so she's here.
so you can speak to yours.
Yeah, I didn't email my own, but I
Okay.
did email another friend who's not here, Stephanie.
Yep, we have her,
She's
she's
on
there.
her.
Thank you. All right, so I'll begin, ones that I have. This email is from Stephanie Kramer. I am writing to ask that you please unmask our children this upcoming school year. These masks are detrimental to their health, both mentally and physically. I worry about all 3 of my children, but I especially worry about my 4-year-old, who will be experiencing school for the first time this coming fall. Not only will he not keep a mask on, I do not feel it's healthy to force this upon him. What are we teaching these little ones, and what harm are we potentially causing them? On so many levels, masking these children any longer is just wrong. I do not feel masks are helpful. I do not feel masks are necessary, and I do not support masking our children. Oh, Mr. Zazal, I forgot to ask you if you could just keep time, and then Dr. Baird will keep time while you're reading yours.
Great.
All right. The next email is from Whitney Margaitis. Dear Dr. Baird and the Board of Education, our kids need to be unmasked next year. They need to see their teachers' faces, their classmates' smiles or frowns, and to hear clearer voices throughout the school. Though most adapted extremely well, I believe these kids deserve to return back to some normalcy. We have all dealt with a great deal for over a year. My youngest daughter attended her first year of half-day preschool at Gilead this year. Though not ideal, I understood the importance of having her wear the mask for the 2.5 hours of her school day. She was supposed to start the full-day program this year, but I felt it was necessary to pull her because of the potential mask wearing for 30-plus hours a week. It did not sit right with me, and I have her now enrolled at a part-time preschool, so she will not have to wear a mask for that extended length of time. I have 2 older daughters, 2nd and 5th grade, that could handle the mask quite well. However, I believe it is imperative for a 4-year-old to see their teacher's expressions and the lips while speaking, and to learn to properly interact with peers. It is essential for their development, and I strongly urge you to take all of these younger children into consideration if the decision is ultimately up to you. This past school year began with much uncertainty with the decision for hybrid or full day. I feel as though the school year was very successful. We were able to open up full time, which is scary, but it worked. I believe we need to take this leap for all the people in these schools, students and teachers. I feel very strongly that it will work out once again, and if upticks in COVID cases arise, you revisit requiring masks the same way you manage our distance learning this year. Our rules and regulations need to adapt just as our kids had to this year. The next email we received is from Erin Bussiere. I live on Wall Street in Hebron, and my child will be a 4th grader this year at Hebron Elementary. I am writing to express my support for students wearing masks when school reopens in September. We have a duty to protect our children. And while the concept of individual freedom is a wonderful thing, when it comes to the health and safety of a group of vulnerable people, such as our children, we need to put our differences aside and work for the betterment of the whole, and not just a few people with a difference of opinion. When you are sick, you go to the doctor. You do not go to the local florist for advice. We need to follow the science here. And for people saying children are not affected by COVID, I urge you to remember the last time your heart was broken because your child was running a fever, was in pain due to an ear infection, or who just felt yucky with a runny nose and cough during cold season. It should not matter if COVID isn't causing every child to be intubated. I don't want even one child to have any symptoms or suffering. If we find ourselves in a situation where the decision to wear masks comes down to a vote by our Board of Education, please know that people will be paying very close attention to that vote. Here is your reminder that elections have consequences. Please do the right thing and please follow the science. Thank you. All right. Ally Schmeisel, do you want to read
Sure.
some as well?
Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
This letter is from Lindsay Schmidt. She says good morning with some opening remarks and then asks to be read some questions. So I'm going to jump right to the questions if that's all right. What will quarantining look like this year? Who will have to quarantine and for how long? Will distance learning be an option for individuals that are made to quarantine, or will they be made to miss however many days of school with zero instructional time? And how will that impact their attendance records? With the current PCR testing being discontinued in December, what testing will be required of students and staff? Will a negative test be sufficient for return to school, or will they still be required to quarantine for the full time frame, even if negative? The extended executive order from the governor expires September 30th, which is tied to the current mask mandate for students. Will there be a plan in place for once this order expires, or will the schools wait until last minute to make a decision? How will mask exemptions be handled this year, since last year families were told distance learning was the only option for students holding exemptions? If the governor allows the executive order to expire and schools are able to make the decision without masking, will the school support parental choice in favor of continuing the mandates in order to obtain funding? Are the schools prepared to uphold their obligation to protect student medical information as required by FERPA by allowing parental choice of masking over mandates requiring unvaccinated individuals to remain masked? What is being done to ensure all teachers treat students equally and do not insert their personal bias and fears into how they address the student population? Some classrooms last year were given many more opportunities to breathe without masks on, while students were made to put masks on while outside 6 feet apart, simply because a teacher witnessed students talking to one another. This had a significant impact on students' emotional learning and in many cases was traumatic and detrimental to student growth. What is being done to address the significant gap in student learning that has occurred over the last year and a half of school? Will there be additional social workers and school psychologists available to address the significant uptick in student anxiety and other emotional concerns due to mask wearing? What about the significant increase in special education services that our younger children will require, particularly speech therapy? Since we know speech is not just acquired through auditory processing, but visual lip reading as well, how is this being addressed in our lower elementary classrooms where a large number of students already come into the school system requiring speech services? And now an even larger population will have a need due to speech delays that have been acquired as a result of mask wearing. If there was to be another statewide shutdown, how would the school address the continuance of at-home learning? What is being done to address the increased screen time that many students struggle with when forced to distance learn? Is the school prepared to address learning gaps with additional reading and math support? With the elementary school nearly doubling in population over the last 5 years, and in particular with it coinciding with mask mandates, shutdowns, and gaps in learning that have occurred in the last 18 months, what staffing adjustments have been made to accommodate these students outside of the classroom? Okay. And do you want to read the next one?
Yes.
This this letter is from Danielle Luca, and she writes, masks are no longer necessary in schools because the virus poses no more threat than the flu, and the COVID mitigation strategies of cohorting, quarantining, contact tracing, social distancing, and physical barriers should be removed so our children can get back to normal academics and normal mental health. Unmask our children and teachers.
Could board members just keep aside the emails that they're reading, because then we can give them to the clerk at the end of the meeting
Yeah.
for minutes?
Sure. I'll apologize in advance if I say this last name wrong, but this first letter is from Tina DeBueno. Hello, I would like to express my concern regarding mask usage in school for next year. It has been shown that children are not affected that much by COVID and have not shown to be super spreaders of the virus. I think at this point, it is truly outrageous and disgusting that our children are still being forced to wear masks all day, every day at school. To me, it's a form of child abuse. The school staff has been vaccinated, and all parents and grandparents that choose to get the vaccine have done so. Our children have sacrificed enough this past year and a half. Enough is enough. My first grader is starting having panic attacks at 7. She doesn't want to go to school anymore because of the masks. She cries every morning on the way to school. Prior to this, she could not get there fast enough and totally loved it. The social and emotional damage being caused is irreparable. She tells me if the kids turn heads to talk to their friends at lunch, well, in plexiglass cubes, they get yelled at. She is in first grade. That is just unacceptable to me. Let these kids be kids, see their friends' smiling faces. I am truly disgusted with what our kids have been put through, and it is time someone does something about it. Please make masks optional for this upcoming school year and leave it to the parents to decide what is best for their children. And my next letter is from Kim Hills. Thank you for the opportunity to voice my family opinion, even though I can't physically be at the meeting. I know we are all on the same team and want the best for our children, students, and staff. I know a few of you from growing up in Hebron, teaching at RAM, and raising 3 children on our family farm in town. I represent teachers and parents that value choice, specifically the choice to mask and the choice to vaccinate. We are all waiting to get more information from Governor Lamont, the Department of Health, and SDE. Many of us have communicated with them as best we can, considering they are still working remotely and rarely return phone calls and emails. Let's be honest, we know our community best and what is best for our work circumstances, family situations, staffing, lack of air conditioning, school and class size, etc. I'm very hopeful that Governor Lamont gives the districts the choice for optional masks, considering Connecticut is one of the few states left with mask mandates and emergency power still in place. That being said, what plans are in place to get community and staff feedback? What plans are in place in the event masks are mandated and many parents choose to homeschool or don't send their children to school until the mandate changes? What plans are in place to best meet the needs of the whole community? What plans are in place if parents and students protest wearing masks the first days or even weeks of school? What plans are in place to attempt to mask students who breathed freely all summer long and are now being forced to wear masks again, all while trying to actually learn? Staff in vulnerable populations that wanted the vaccine have had the opportunity to receive it and therefore protect it. Many students and staff have acquired natural immunity and unfortunately contracted COVID, but have helped our community progress to reach the herd immunity. Staff and students are safe at school without masks. The Delta variant does not pose a threat. Students and staff shouldn't come to school if they have symptoms of any illness. They should stay home, recover, and prevent transmission. Other than that, the mitigation strategies, we don't need mass cohorting, quarantining, extra nursing staff, plastic barriers, temperature checks, and the PCR testing. Our Hebron Public Schools committed to wearing masks in the upcoming school year based on funding previously received and the stipulations around that funding. Specifically, CDC guidelines must be followed, and if the CDC states unvaccinated individuals must wear masks, then what is Hebron's mandate going to be? Additionally, if a mandate isn't law and staff or students don't follow it, what are the repercussions? Thank you for taking the time to read this. Thank you for being open to communicate and making decisions that best reflect our community. We believe in choice, a family's choice to mask their children and their choice to vaccinate their children. Each family should be able to do what's best for themselves. In partnership, Kim Hills.
Thank you. Joe Zizell.
Do you want to do your time?
Huh?
Do you want me to do it?
Yes, please.
All right.
So this letter is from Meg Clifton from Ampson. Hello, my name is Meg Clifton, and I'm the parent of a 4th grader at HES. As a parent, as an educator in town, and as someone who cares about the health, safety, and education of our children, I know the best way for us to meet the academic and social needs of our students is to require universal masking, as strongly encouraged by the American Academy of Pediatrics and the CDC. Last year, many were frustrated by sudden switches to remote learning and last-minute quarantines. These disruptions negatively impacted staff, students, and parents. This year, with the more contagious Delta variant and the simple fact that basically every single student at the 2 elementary schools cannot yet get vaccinated, we would see more negative disruptions to the students' learning if students are not wearing masks. Why would members of the Board of Education, who I presume ran for their positions because they care about our children and their education, knowingly endanger our children's health and education by not requiring masks? Please require masks. Thank you, Meg Clifton, Hampstead.
Yep.
This one is from Alana Quinto. Dr. Baird, principals, Mr. Larkin, and Mrs. Uriano, our Town of Hebron Board of Education, and others who are working on mask guidance for our schools. As we are headed into our 3rd school year that will be affected by COVID-19, please strongly consider making masks for children optional. Children have made many sacrifices in school to protect themselves and adults during this time. Enough is enough. A vaccine is now available and the pandemic is receding. This should allow kids to return to school to an environment that closely resembles pre-COVID normalcy. This means in-person, full-time, no masks. An environment where they can play with their friends on the playground, eat lunch next to their peers in the cafeteria, and once again experience the joy of seeing their classmates and their teachers' smiling faces. The point of masks was to protect while we had no vaccine. Now we have vaccinated the vulnerable and anyone else who opted to receive the vaccine. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention has advised that vaccinated people can now safely take off their masks in all settings, even in the presence of unvaccinated people. The evidence overwhelmingly shows that unvaccinated, unmasked children will pose no threat to the staff at Gilead School and Hebron Elementary School, who have the option and ability to be vaccinated if they see fit. The mental health impact of mask wearing for kids needs to also be strongly considered in your decision on mask requirements. Children are not able to read emotions and facial expressions, which are necessary to build their socialization skills. Wearing masks is negatively impacting the development of these important skills, causing children to become increasingly lonely and have less interest in human connection. This can lead to things such as depression, anxiety, and suicidal thoughts. This is very scary and could be completely avoided if masks are not mandated, and is doing more damage at this point to keep children masked. Let them be maskless, free to breathe, and see each other's faces. As PTA co-president, I have received numerous messages from families who feel as strongly as I do about lifting the mask requirement for children this fall. Parents are desperate and looking for alternative education options so they do not have to send their children to school wearing a mask. Making the decision to homeschool so that a child doesn't have to wear a mask is very unfortunate, as Hebron has an amazing school system. Majority of school staff are vaccinated, so let the children use other methods to stay safe, like social distancing, hand sanitizer, and desk shields if you feel this is absolutely necessary. But let our children return to as much normal as possible, free to breathe, without masks. Families who opt to continue masking should be fully supported in that decision. Families who choose to stop mask wearing should also be fully supported and given this freedom of choice for their children. This fall, I'm urging you to please let parents make the choice whether or not their child wears a mask to school. Children are happy and enjoying a mask-free summer. They're smiling with their friends and feeling safe again. Let children not live in fear anymore. Wearing masks made sense last year while there was no vaccine and the number of positive cases was much higher. We are not protected now, and the number of positive cases in our town. Got one more.
All right.
Ready?
Yep.
Hello, everyone. My name is Stephanie Wright, and I have 2 children, a 10-year-old at HES and a 12-year-old incoming 7th grader at RAM. I'm not going to waste anyone's time by reciting the myriad scientific research that's been done by professionals. I'm not an epidemiologist. I'm not here for political reasons. I'm simply here as a mother because I want to make sure that all voices are heard, that our children, all of our children, not just mine, are protected. We know as a school community for a fact that masks are effective at preventing the spread of COVID. We have an entire school year's worth of data to prove it. The faculty and staff at GHS and HES went above and beyond to make sure our kids stayed as safe and healthy as possible last year. Why would we even consider lifting the mask mandate this year until the families of these kids have the option to vaccinate them? If anything, it's more important than ever to mandate masks for children in our elementary schools. It's not about personal comfort. It's not about selfishness. It's not about political parties. It's so much larger than that. It's about our community. It's about being responsible. Who are we if we do not show our children that caring about the health and safety of others matters? Please listen to the science, believe the data you have from your own personal experience last year. Please protect our kids and continue to require masks on school property, at least until the vaccine for the younger age groups is available. Thank you, Stephanie Wright.
Thank you. So I know we have some people in the audience as well, so if you want, you can stay at your seat, or if you want to come up to the mic, is that preferred?
Yes.
Just so people can hear you that are watching our live stream, that would be great.
Oh.
So Nicole Matthews is first.
Is this mic on?
It is, yeah, you can hold it closer to you.
Can everybody hear me okay? Good?
Yes. Thank you.
My name is Nicole Matthews. I live at 60 Old Daniels Lane in Lansing, Connecticut. I started as a letter, so I'll just read it to you. Good evening. I'm here to speak in support of a mask requirement for children, faculty, and staff. I have a child entering second grade and am very concerned with the anti-mask, anti-science rhetoric that threatens the safety and health of all those who attend and work in our schools. I've spent considerable time attempting to understand why anyone would be so against a simple, effective, proven method of reducing the transmission of COVID-19. I have heard arguments ranging from speech issues, mental health, and inability to read emotions, to CO2 retention. However, I've yet to be presented with nor find sound, peer-reviewed, reproducible, empirical evidence to any of the medical claims against mask wearing. The pandemic is not over, not in the state and not in Hebron. Cases continue to rise since the end of the mask mandates, and Connecticut is now hovering around 3% positivity rate. Many people arguing against masks in schools cite the recovery rates and supposed low rates of children acquiring and dying from the virus. While that isn't even true, I take any risk that a child would be unnecessarily exposed to and infected by a potentially deadly virus with long-term complications. Masks do no harm to children. The belief that children are resilient enough to bounce back from a fatal respiratory disease but cannot handle wearing a mask is mind-boggling. I am the chairperson of a preschool outside of this district. We follow the state and Chatham Health masking guidelines. We modeled proper mask wearing and had absolutely no problems with mask compliance among 3, 4, and 5-year-olds. We had no speech issues, no developmental delays due to masks. Last year, we had 0 cases of COVID. We also saw no strep, no flu, no hand, foot, and mouth disease. Across the entire country, RSV, an infant and childhood respiratory virus, has become nearly non-existent during times of increased masking. We parents are expected to be good leaders and set an example for our children by our behavior. Kids are altruistic and naturally want to do what is best for everyone. This board is expected to make sound decisions to keep the district running smoothly while keeping our children in school and safe. A mask requirement is a benign, beneficial solution. And I will add on, because I think I have some time. I've been a paramedic for 19 years. I have cared for children who can't breathe. I have been the last person in front of them when they can't breathe. You don't want to be responsible for that.
Thank you. Dana Egan.
Hi, I'm Dana Egan and I live in Amston. I have a 10-year-old daughter entering the 6th grade at Hebron Elementary who isn't eligible for the vaccine yet, and a 12-year-old daughter that is vaccinated, but she's also a newly diagnosed type 1 diabetic that would be more at risk for complications if she did contract COVID-19. I felt compelled to come here tonight because I heard through the grapevine that there are parents in town that are advocating to unmask our kids. I simply don't understand this stance. All of the children at GHS and HES are unvaccinated. Why on earth would we want any of them to catch or spread a disease that can make them sick, potentially hospitalized, or develop long-term communications that we just don't know about yet? Wearing a mask is easy. It's harmless, and it's been proven to reduce the spread of COVID-19. Wearing a mask also means you care about the health and safety of other people, like your neighbor's children or their immunocompromised family member. It's the right thing to do right now. So I'm here asking that you please issue a mask requirement at Hebron Public Schools, at least until the vaccines have been approved for each school's age group. Thank you.
Siobhan DeGray.
Good job on the pronunciation. Good evening. My name is Shavonda Gray. I live at 294 Martin Road in Hebron, and I'm here tonight as a concerned Hebron parent. I truly hope that the Hebron Board of Education will support that our school district continues to follow guidance from the local health authorities when it comes to determining what protocols will be necessary to keep our students safe during the upcoming school year. Specifically, I hope that Hebron Public Schools will continue to require masking in all school buildings. Pre-K through grade 6 students are currently not eligible for vaccination, so we must continue to take all necessary precautions to protect our children. The measures taken in our schools during the 2020-2021 school year proved how effective masking, barriers, and distancing are in preventing infections in our schools. The American Academy of Pediatrics, the CDC, the Connecticut Department of Health, and our own Chatham Health District all strongly recommend that children wear masks when returning to schools. Please listen to the advice of the experts and help us keep our children safe. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. And that is all I have in regard to anyone that's signed in for public comment. If there's anyone that's here that didn't get a chance to sign in and wants to give public comment, let me do so now.
Are you signed in? Am I supposed to sign in?
Yes, please. Thank you so much.
You can.
If you want to leave it there, just state your name and address for the record, that's fine.
Diana Morales, 90 Congress Drive, and if I may state, can I have my?
Yeah.
I didn't put my name in there, but I'm a parent of 3 children. I have 3 boys, 2, 5, and one that's going to 7th grade, all 3 different school systems. My 5-year-old is barely, learning how to speak correctly. He cannot go in, he was in preschool here, great teachers at Gilead. However, I'm very concerned that the mask going into this year will totally demolish him. So please consider that the board, none of the board members or anybody in this town is a health expert. However, there is a freedom of choice of children they have parents. We should be able to calculate and do what's right for our children. And that, we have to keep that in mind. We can't just keep making all these decisions based on, there's facts from CDC that are changing by the minute, so nothing is correct, okay? So there should be a choice of the parents to be able to decide for their own children what's best for them. And if your family is compromised, I have a husband that has an autoimmune disease, he's vaccinated. We have done all the right things, but I don't think it's fair that our children should struggle and suffer because of the consequences of other folks. Everybody should be able to make their own choice. This is a free country. We're in America. We should all be able to make decisions for our own children. My son struggled through 6th grade last year, and he's a straight A student. He was emotionally wrecked because of the mask wearing. Every time he went out in the playground outside, he was tagged by teachers telling him to put their mask over his eyeballs. So I just don't want to have to go through another year of my children struggling and being able not to fall asleep at night. I shouldn't have to get a kindergarten letter from the questionnaire saying how good of a mask wearer is my kindergartner going to be going into kindergarten this year. That is not right. More questions were asked about how good he's going to be handling the mask wearing in the school system, and this is back when school ended this year. So there's just so many facts that go into this, and I know you guys have a really hard job to do here at the board, but as a parent, I should have to be able to make the choice for my child's life, not anyone else. So please consider both sides of the venue here, because we have people that are against mask wearing, and we have people that want to wear it. They should be able to make the choice for their own families. So I really appreciate you taking into consideration all the letters, because there's a lot of people in town that couldn't be here today, but I know there's a lot of opinions going around, so I thank you for that. You guys, I have a hard job.
Thank you. Is there anyone else for public comment at this time? All right, so we'll move on. Another board, we have a statement on that, so I'll read during the chair's report in just a little bit. That's a follow the right procedure, so I'll just read it again. So next on the agenda is approval of minutes. So I'd ask if somebody make a possible motion to approve the meeting minutes of the regular meeting of June 10th, 2021, the special meeting of July 27th, 2021, the special meeting of July 3, 2021, charter board retreat.
So moved.
Joe Zizell moves, Ally Schweitzel seconds. Okay.
Alice Schwindel?
Yeah.
Aye.
Yes, sorry.
Amanda Veneziano, aye. Heather Pettit?
Aye.
Joe Zuzell?
Joe Zuzell, aye.
Joe Margaitis?
Joe Margaitis, aye.
Oh,
Thank you, motion passes unanimously. The communications committee meeting for Chair Veneziano,
there was no quorum.
There was no quorum.
And I do accept the minutes as,
you accept the minutes as presented?
yes.
All right, thank you. All right, the district advancement update, Dr. Bear?
So I'm going to invite our business manager, Ms. O'Leary, to take us through the audit findings as they related to the Board of Education and our response to date.
From right here is okay, right?
Yes.
Okay. So I provided a handout as you sat down today.
And let me just interrupt for 1 second. Joe Margaitis, the information that Caitlin's sharing in the handout is the exact same information that is in her written report that you have already in the email packet.
Perfect, I'll pull it up. Thank you.
Okay. Took the words right out of my mouth, Dr.
Oh, great minds and all that.
These are just some updates on some of the findings. There's 4 different categories here that were referenced. One is about the general ledger and maintenance, the town and the Board of Ed reconciliation, just some internal accounts payable procedures, and cash and investment controls. Those are the 4 categories. And the way that this document is put together, and Joe Margaitis, the notes within my business manager's report, you'll see each one of them bulleted. And then the first 2 bullets are directly from the audit report. So it's what is the finding and what is the recommendation? And then the 3rd bullet is my update. So that's how it's organized, just so that you have an idea as we're going through. So under the area of general ledger maintenance, the concern that was addressed in the audit findings was that although we've transitioned to iVisions, there were all of our general fund data, all of our grant data, all of our tuition data was in the system, but the reconciliation process, like accounting for our student activities accounts and our cafeteria funds was happening outside of that area. So the monthly reports that I give to you are just in Excel. So it was a process of reconciling with the bank statements and putting the data into Excel and not having it in the financial system. So this was something that we ourselves had identified and was like on our radar to move forward with anyway. So the fact that it came up in these findings just sort of sped up the process for us. So you'll see on the 3rd bullet down here, my update is that on June 11th, I had a day of training set aside with iVisions to just, okay, great, just help me get all of the data in and we'll be good and we'll move forward. And what they found was there were some back-end pieces that were not quite set up right in the beginning, which was making it sort of impossible to, there's a process to be able to like reconcile bank statements right in the system, which we really wanted to be able to do. And they knew it would take some more days of training. So he went back, consulted with his team, and came back and offered like a 5-day training, called it, to fix all of that. So that's scheduled now. The first day will be August 30th, and then September 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, and then we're just working on getting that 5th day. But hopefully by that first week in September, everything's in, and we're ready to go. So that's the update around moving towards getting everything in iVisions. And that'll be really exciting when it's there. It'll make everybody's lives a lot easier, I think. The second bullet was around the town and board reconciliation processes. There was just some concern that our, the books weren't as balanced as they would like them to be at the end of the year. So really, so just going to the update, we had an initial meeting. Dr. Baird and I met with town manager, finance director, and I want to get everybody's titles right, and finance administrator to just sort of talk out what these procedures could look like, and made some action steps, which we've already sort of taken some movement on already. So we're going to have in-person monthly meetings between me and I always mix up whose title is here. The town finance administrator will meet. The two of us will meet, review any concerns, and then provide like written feedback to the finance director with our next steps, which will be resolved by the end of the month. So that's just the procedure as far as reconciling between our two accounts. But the other thing that was making it quite difficult was the way that our health insurance was originally set up. It just made it impossible without sort of, again, pulling the data out of our financial system, manipulating it in Excel and sending it back. So I met with some other business managers, talked to the auditor, talked to the team, and came up with some plans to update all of that. So all of our deductions have all been reset in the system, and it's all going to work. So that one's taken care of at this point. We've had our first reconciliation meeting in mid-June to close out the end of last year. Everything looked good, and so we'll just continue with those throughout the year. The third bullet is just about, is just a quick one around the fact that our accounts payable specialist cannot enter new vendors. The one paying the bills can't be the one entering the vendors. So now she is not, and I am. That was an easy fix. And then the final bullet, number 4, cash and investment controls. What the concern around there though is that there was not a formalized process around reconciling these statements at the end of this week. At the end of the month. So much like our reconciliation process with the town, 2 people will be reviewing it each month and signing off, like physical signatures will go onto a printed piece of paper, which will be stored in our files in our office for others to review. It typically is a 2-person process, but just to have those signatures, we'll really make sure that we're showing evidence of what we need to be doing, and really tightening up, I think, with the grant funds was where we mostly needed to pay some more particular attention. So that's happening now. For the accounts that are outside of iVisions, it's still happening in Excel, but it will be it's a feature of iVisions that we can do right in the system once we have that end of August training and get everything in there. So we're moving forward with that. I know that the town finance, the Board of Finance was looking for
monthly updates as well. So this is following tonight's meeting. This will be sent to them. Also, they had asked for a copy of the year-to-date financial report. So those two items will go off to them. And then, as I'm able to provide updates moving forward, I'll just provide updates to my work around the audit findings through my business manager's report. So I'll be sending that report with the year-to-date financials to them. Anybody have any questions? No.
Josie Zell, board member. So in terms of the iVision software, is that a relatively new program? Have we been using it for a while?
It was implemented in January 1st of 2020.
And so, in terms of the setup, was that like a snafu with the software? Is that like our situation?
It's hard to tell.
I'm just wondering if we have assurances from the software that things like that won't happen in the future. Especially if there's a setup where we thought it was a day of training and now it's going to be a 5-day training, and we do know that sometimes software, depending on the server that they're using, we can have hiccups down the road. It seems like an important sort of scenario. So I was just wondering if they were offering any sort of assurances or reasons for some of that.
The way that their training works is it's never just provide us your data and we dump it into our system. It's we're training you on how to put your data in here.
Okay.
So by design, I don't think there are any assurances in place because they circle back to they'll answer any, they have their training manuals and they'll walk you right through it, but you're always sitting right beside them with the data, entering it right in. So,
Thank you.
And of course, this predated Caitlin's hire, but it's shipped to the new financial system.
So have you had to do a lot of revisions since you've been here from what was previously put in?
There were definitely some revisions that there were some things that required some attention. There were other places that were, really done with a really high level of detail and accuracy. So I am happy about those. But I've been working to revamp mostly the medical insurance, and that's a big piece of the budget. So it was just doing some fixes with that along the way.
Is it because it's a consortium that makes it difficult, or just?
No, I think it sounds like had a lot of conversations about medical insurance and financial software since I started. So what I found is it sounds like a lot of districts don't utilize payroll deductions for the employer share of their insurance payments. So, if I have to pay $100 for insurance, $100 comes out of my pay, and that part happens through payroll. But then the balance that the board pays on my behalf is just sort of paid through accounts payable and not through payroll. And a lot of people do that because it's difficult to set up. But I definitely see the value in that because you have all of the data all in one place. So our old financial system did the employer share through the accounts payable process. So putting it through a payroll deduction was new. So the first hurdle was that, and we implemented mid-year. So the system sets maximums, and the maximum was set as a 6 month, like a maximum for 6 months rather than all 12 months. So it's like an easy mistake to make, I think. So that caused some issue. And then the codes are in different segments, and one of, it was the second to last segment that needed, or it was the last segment rather than the second to last segment that needed to shoot data in different directions in the back end. And so we put new account codes in. Really excited. I could talk about it all day.
You don't have to, Caitlin, Ms. O'Leary, at least not for me. My last question though is really the one I really want to know. So are you able to meet with the town now on a monthly basis? Are they available to do that?
Yeah, so we had our first meeting on June 15th, and our next one's scheduled for August 15th, as long as that's on the weekend. Otherwise, it's Friday prior. So far, so good.
All right, good.
We're 1 for 1.
All right, are there any other board member questions? All right, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Superintendent's report, Dr. Berry.
Sure. I don't have a lot to update you on this month, and maybe because I finally was taking some vacation. It's been difficult to schedule vacation since arriving in the middle of a pandemic, or right before the pandemic hit, rather. There's not a lot of updates related to COVID operations because we're still awaiting final guidelines for the fall. So most of my updates were at our June meeting. It's still a relatively new updates because we haven't implemented those changes as of yet because they were for the fall. The only thing new around COVID would be that we have updated guidance around quarantines, specifically that if students are student-to-student contact within the classroom, within between 3 and 6 feet, previously they would be meeting the definition of needing to quarantine. Now, if they're between 3 and 6 feet, they would not need to quarantine. But consistent mask wearing for those students would have to be in place to meet that condition. And it does not apply to the bus. It's specific to student contact in the classroom. I talked about that at length at the last meeting. That was an area that I was hopeful that we'd get some change in guidance because we didn't see COVID transmission within the school. So it seemed to me that there should be some updating around the quarantine close contact definition. So that was a nice update that I was hopeful to see. That will mostly be helpful when we have students who are crossing cohorts, so receiving special ed services together, for example. You will be able to maintain that 3 feet of distance, and they wouldn't be taking their masks off because they wouldn't be having snack or lunch or something like that. So that'll be helpful when we're doing contact tracing. So that's the most significant update that I have around COVID. The other one that is not, I don't think is as significant, but it's something we were considering, was eliminating the one-way hallways. So we are going to be eliminating the one-way hallways. We didn't see a lot of evidence that was effective or needed. There'll be some places around the school where they are still going to put the line on the floor because they found that the students, it just helps with track and flow. So I think that there'll be some places where the line will still be there, but we won't be having the one-way hallway piece. We've been told that we will be getting masking updates within the coming weeks. So I think we're all eagerly anticipating what that update will be. I know we're going to talk more about masking under the board chair's report, so that really is the extent of my COVID update. Some other updates of note: we are continuing to do our recruitment and hiring for open positions, specifically paraprofessionals and academic tutors. We also had some recent resignations this week, so those positions have been posted as of today, and we will be looking to hire those folks into those positions before the beginning of the school year. None of them are classroom teachers, so that's not of concern. We have a curriculum and instruction specialist here at Gilead Hill is open. The floating interventionist position is open, and we have a special education teacher position currently open. A few of us participated in the last town building committee meeting that was held on the 19th of June. The RFP is being finalized for the consultant to come in and give us some recommendations around the repair and replacement of portions of both schools' roofs. We've been talking about that quite a bit. We also talked about the need for an HVAC study to come in and look at installing AC in both schools, but overall, just also the heating and cooling between both buildings is very uneven. So there really, in my opinion, should be a comprehensive study of all the heating and cooling within both buildings. And we should get some recommendations for then how to move forward with that. I have talked to the town manager about that specifically. I think that would be a good use of town COVID funding. The other thing that Andy and I discussed was what's the status of the town COVID funding, and what projects are going to be prioritized. He is going to be discussing this with the Board of Selectmen. He doesn't feel like it should just be like the town manager and the superintendent sitting down and just like making all decisions about how to spend $1 million, and I certainly don't disagree with that. So he was going to suggest having a joint Board of Ed, Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance, sort of like mini committee to discuss how to utilize some of that funding. And he said that they're still waiting for some more guidance for how the town funding could be utilized. Mrs. Pettit will probably be bringing this up on her report as well, but they are looking to, the Board of Selectmen is going to be asked to form a roof project committee. So they'll be looking for some Board of Ed members to serve on that committee. And I'll let Heather talk more about that in her report. One other thing we should probably talk about, again, probably under the chair report, Mrs. Pettit, would be the policy committee and who might chair that. That would be, because Liaison and you guys have accepted that resignation. Some good news, we received official notification, so different than our report. It said we had unofficial communication. Now we've had official communication that the consent agreement for the lead remediation project needs at Hebron Elementary School. So there was an agreement between the Department of Public Health on how the water could be utilized at Hebron until all the concerns were rectified. As you know, we've had clearance to use the system, the pipes have been replaced, but we had to wait until after June 30th for that official consent agreement to be lifted. It is now lifted. So that is great news. We had our admin retreat at the beginning of July. We spent time revising our safety and security plan to incorporate some new procedures that we're putting into place. We're going to be updating the quick flip chart to reflect those changes. So that is being done with Print Shop now. We'll be doing some different security trainings with staff over the course of the fall to implement some of those new strategies that the Safety and Security District Committee decided to move forward with. We also discussed academic tutoring and enrichment, how we're going to begin that in the fall. And we did some work around the district advancement plan and participated in some professional development around family engagement strategies. So that's my update around the admin retreat. And we have now completed our initial curriculum development for STEAM, which was really about setting a vision for STEAM, a vision for science instruction, some non-negotiables, and develop some initial professional development strategies for that team. We're going to be reaching out to our talented enrichment teacher when we're back in session, along with our art and music teachers, to then bring them into the next level of the work. But the work is really specific to the STEAM classroom in science and the library media classroom. So that's why they were the ones that were working this summer. It really just was a kickoff to a lot more work that will happen over the next 2 to 3 years around STEAM curriculum development and library media curriculum development. But it was a really nice opportunity to work with that small team last week. The health and wellness and PE curriculum team will be getting work next week. They're going to work over 2 weeks to sort of kick off that work. The goal for that team is a little bit further along than the STEAM curriculum. Their goal is to really lead with a 2D scoping sequence that's been solidified for the initial implementation during the school year. We'll have a lot more information about both of those projects worked into our Board of Ed meetings over the fall and winter within the district advancement update. So you'll have myself and Dr. Briere talking to you a lot more about these projects, but that's some of the initial work that happened over the summer. And that concludes my report for tonight.
Thank you very much. Joe Zuzel.
Joe Zuzel, board member. So I first got to say, I'm so excited about the STEAM curriculum, the health, PE, wellness curriculum. I cannot wait to hear updates from that. I think this is well aligned with the district advancement plan. It's exciting that we're getting work done and, school's not even in session yet. I think that's great. One quick question I had was about Hebron L water and the lead remediation project. So is it safe to assume that we will go back to the every 2-year testing schedule with Chatham Health? Can you speak a little bit about that, how that will go back to the normal of testing is what we usually do?
I don't know that it's every 2 years.
Every 4?
We have a series of different water tests that have to be done at both schools. We revert now back to the regular testing schedule.
Okay.
So I think the full battery might be every 3 years, but don't quote me on that. We talked about it when we were talking about some of the concerns here at Gilead Hill.
Right.
But we still would flush after a prolonged closure. But our buildings are pretty much like used year round. But if we have like after April break, for example, we would flush here the morning of the first day of school. But in terms of water testing, we're back on the regular schedule for both buildings.
Great, thank you.
But there are different things that have to be tested at over different schedules. So our certified water operator handles all of that for us.
Thank you. All right, the business managers report, Ms. O'Leary.
Updates from our technology department. We just are, working on inventory and servicing devices that were handed in over the summer, and moving forward with some purchases of laptops for staff, and then after that, some iPad replacements for some iPads that had reached end of life. Those were items that were included in the budget for this year. So Dave and his huge team over there, too, well on their way to getting those things accomplished. Under facilities, we know that Wayne is retiring. We've got him for a couple of more weeks so that he has some time to overlap with our new facilities director who we've hired. So he'll be here through the beginning of September to help us out with some of that. So we really appreciate that, and we'll hope to have him attend the board meeting in September so that we can wish him well. So he'll come at that time. Dr. Barrett already spoke to the roof replacement project, so I'll just skip right over that. We do have a school security grant, which we were eligible for. We submitted some funding, and to be honest, it was because it requires a significant match for which we didn't budget for this year. We couldn't access as much funds as are allowable through the funding, but we could retroactively get some reimbursement for some security measures. So a lot of the grant was around that. So looking back in 3 years of our files and seeing when we, installed doors and locks and buzzers and things like that, submitting them as part of the packet, and then basically looking at what would be the reimbursement for those items, and that created some funding for us to then be able to put in and ask for a fence at Hebron Elementary to separate the parking lot from the playscape. That was something that had come up in a security audit that the staff at HES had done. So we're waiting on feedback to see if that was funded. I haven't heard yet. The student activity accounts reports are included, so that sort of concludes last fiscal year, as well as the food service report and the preschool report. So those are the year-end figures for those reports there. The grants section is significant this time, and there is an action item for you under there. We had the opportunity to submit an application for a primary mental health grant. So the first 2 pages, the 2 pages of the grants section of my report spell out in detail what the primary mental health grant is, but in brief, it's a $20,000 grant to hire a part-time, what they call child associate. This is a non-certified position that works under the direction of the school psychologist to provide child-based
play therapy to students who are identified as, potentially needing some services to be able to thank you, like losing my words, to be more successful in the general education classroom. So it wouldn't be those top tier students that are identified through the DESA. That's the tool we're looking to utilize to identify students. That's the tool that we're going to be using universally with students this year. This would be that sort of second tier of students, so not the students that are in the top, 1 to 5%, but that 5 to 20%. And this, the child associate would work with students once or twice a week for 12 weeks, in total 30 to 40 students throughout the school year, and they could be between pre-K and third grade. That's pretty much the summary of that. I don't know if any of you have any questions about this grant, but the grant does require Board of Ed approval. It can be retroactive to the submission, so I submitted with a letter that said that we would bring it to this board meeting and have, and respond back with meeting minutes if approved to be our final piece of that application. So does anybody have questions about it?
Joe Giselle?
Just as a board member, so what are the qualifications of the individual who's coming in? They're non-licensed staff. What is their qualification in terms of play therapy?
The grant doesn't require it, specific qualifications.
Are they going to school for play therapy? Are they in a collegiate program? Or are they just?
That's an ideal candidate.
So it could be any individual that would work underneath the school psychologist.
Mhm.
And they're required to participate in state training.
Prior to,
Prior to or
While-
ongoing?
while they're hired, or, I'm sorry.
After they're hired.
Joe Giselle.
No, that's quite all right. Go ahead, Madam Chair.
I apologize, I just broke my own rule. For the board chair. And so prior to them being hired or while they're hired and working under the grant dollars?
So you would hire the individual and they'd attend training before implementing any programming. This is a grant that that I have worked with in my prior school district, and the person that was hired for the position at that time was somebody who had done some, some tutoring, some working before and after school programs, had an interest in pursuing a degree in education, and he was looking for more experience. So that individual worked directly with the school psychologist. So the grant requires a once per week, it requires 1 hour per week that the psychologist and the child associate are working side by side. So whether it's like reviewing data or lesson planning, they would have that support and the state level training.
Josie is a board member. So do you know what the curriculum for the play-based therapy is based on? Is it Montessori? Is it a Reggio Emilia curriculum? Do we know?
That is a great question. I don't know that it's tied to one of those, but I do know that there's just goal setting, and it sounds to me like more, if I may say, more similar to Montessori, student-led, with the adult sort of asking questions along the way as they're playing to try to sort of support some of the goals that are set in collaboration with parents.
And we've utilized this service for like tier 2 SRBI intervention. Is that what we're looking for?
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, can I just ask one more question?
Yeah.
And so do we know the space, and we talked about facilities or different things like that at all, or are we waiting for grant before, like chicken and the egg type of situation?
So I wrote, because you'd have to write in there, I think there is a space in the specials wing of the school that currently is sort of underutilized. I think it has some storage in there, and we had identified that as a potential space to use. We did put some funding in for play materials for the room. So this grant would support the salary of the child associate and the purchase of the play materials.
Alex Renzo.
Alex Renzo, board member, I'm sorry if it says it here, who's the funder?
It's through Connecticut State Department.
Okay, so is it maybe like federal coming through, or is it?
Possibly.
And then I'm just curious, this is kind of into the weeds, so if we don't know it yet, I apologize, but so in terms of parental consent to participate in the program, I'm curious if there will be parental consent to participate and or also a separate consent to then share data with the funder. So if we don't know it now, that's fine, but just at some point.
I do, and it is all part of the parental consent, so.
It's an all,
Yep.
in one, okay.
Just a question about the funding. So are we planning, so say we approve this, once the 20,000 grant is done, this is not something that's gonna be anticipated, we're gonna come back and need more, like, we're gonna space it out so that we use the 20,000 this year and that's it, and not come to the board for more funds?
It's a 1-year, $20,000 grant. They do just anecdotally tend to continue to fund districts that ask to continue to be funded. But to continue the program, we would be relying on continued funding through the primary mental health plan.
Yeah, Joe Marquez, do you have any questions?
No,
It's not a question, more of a statement, I don't know, and I can't speak to all of HM staff's specific area, but I think that they might be somebody to reach out to if we do get this grant. I'm sure they have staff, and maybe they have staff that are part-time that could do this extra piece, that have that experience already. That's a thought, but,
That was one of my thoughts as well.
all right. So before you go on, because you need our approval, before you can even accept this grant, if we do get it. So I would ask for a motion to approve the primary mental health program grant application as presented.
So moved. Second.
Amanda moves, Shannon seconds. Any discussion? Joseph?
So, I don't know why I'm hesitant with this. I mean, I appreciate grant opportunities. I know that it's an important time to have social emotional structures. I'm a big advocate for creative play. I just think there's some unknowns with this. So maybe if you could provide a little bit more clarification on like where the funding's coming from, what the idea of that is, maybe that would help me a little bit better understand sort of where this is from. Do you know what I mean? So does this go out all the time? Is this a regular sort of grant? Is this is the first time this district is hearing of it?
No, this is funding that's been around for quite a while.
Okay.
The first time I wrote for it, I would say it was 7 or 8 years ago. So, and before that, I had been a grant reader for it about 5 years before that. So I've interacted with it minimally, but know that it's been around at least as, 10, 12
Okay, that's
plus
good.
years. And I know that much is through the State Department of Education. The program is out of, I didn't come with that level of data, and I don't want to sort of speak and say the wrong thing, but I'm not going to say which institute I'm thinking because I'm not 100%, but it's out of New York, and it's the research around this program typically
requires a certain sort of assessment, right? And what we decided as a team was, we're already sort of going all in on this DESA tool, so we only will, move forward if we can use the DESA tool as our measure, which may, when the state reads it, that may be it for them. They may not decide to fund us specifically because of that, but I did call Dr. Quinones at the State Department of Ed. She's the ed consultant that's overseeing it, and she, I told her our concern, and she said, go right ahead and submit. We're working, they sort of see that as something that's like stopping others from trying to apply for the funding as well. If nobody wants to like throw on an addendum or a layer of assessment, that's not needed. So if they're in the works to try to eliminate that requirement, and they're the ones sponsoring DESA as their universal screen anyway. So they're trying to do the same kind of work that we said that we needed to.
Are the outcomes favorable? Do we see, increases in socialization, learning specific skills? I mean, do we know what those outcomes are?
I don't have outcome data to share. I don't know.
I would say this, that Ms. O'Leary and I were familiar with this grant from our work in our previous district. We knew that anecdotally that it was viewed favorably by the schools that chose to participate in it. I would say that the school staff here doesn't feel strongly one way or the other. They say this is an opportunity. It feels like low level, low stakes. It's money that we'd be getting as a grant. It's not necessarily something that we're committed to for more than a year at a time. So we could try it, if it was something that worked, we could reapply, because we know that just historically that this funding has been there for a long time. But if it was something that didn't fit, then we didn't have the obligation to continue with it after a year. If it's something that people aren't feeling, if the board isn't feeling strongly about it either, it's not something that we have to pursue. We can inform the state that the board didn't approve it and we're not pursuing it this year. But it's not a make or break. It's not something that people feel strongly one way or the other. It was really something that we thought could be an enhancement and we could try and then see if it's something we want to continue or not.
Thank you, that's good clarification.
Madam Chair.
Yeah.
Amanda McGann, Board Secretary. Because it is low level, stake, and it's not something that we're going to be doing additional screenings for. If we can use, that's a great. But I just feel like right now, there's so much concern with the social and emotional, and rightly so, that I feel that this is a good year. We have it. We're not putting anything extra into it, especially if we can get someone from AHM, because it's proven to be such an asset to us. And I just feel like maybe just having that playtime with someone may help someone who's struggling. But I think definitely as long as we're not doing any more assessments, because that's the last thing our kids need and our staff. So I'm in favor of this for a year, try it and see, and then if it doesn't work for us, next year we just don't move forward.
And I'll just say that was not non-negotiable for us. We were not going to add another layer of assessment. So if they don't accept that we're going to use a different assessment, they may not fund us for that reason too. But that was a key component for us.
I agree with that as well.
Okay, to the roll call.
Any other discussion?
Alice Myra, Amanda Veneziano, aye. Heather Pettit,
Aye.
Joe Zuzel,
Joe Zuzel, aye.
Joe Margaitis,
Bill Margaitis, aye.
all in favor, motion passes.
Thank you.
Two other quick grant updates. The American Rescue Plan was approved on July 22nd, and IDEA was approved on July 26th. Moving right along. And then the next, page and a half is just a repeat of the audit findings. You can sort of skip through there if you're following along, and then the last one is the year-to-date financial report. So you apologize. I had an error in the first fiscal year-end 21 report. So you have a revised one that was mailed to you yesterday and in your updated packets, and it's up online now. So we We ended the year with a balance of $174,422, primarily because weeks before the school year ended, we received our FICA reimbursement from the federal government. So, we were moving in the direction of about $40,000. And then we got that. So 170, whatever, I just said 174.
And if I could just add, so we would be requesting that the town deposit those funds into our non-lapsing account once the audit is complete. Was what the Board of Finance had sort of asked of us to wait till the audit is complete, to put forward and ask at that time. So I think that would make sense.
So the next two items that you have are are now current fiscal year. So all the other reports were last fiscal year, current fiscal year financial reports, and I provided you with two different templates. So the first one is the template you've seen from last year. It mirrors the fiscal year 21 that we were just looking at. And the one after that is a report that comes straight from iVision. I was trying to, there's no way for the system to replicate what you've been seeing here before, because we have it sort of subcategories set up, salaries, benefits, professional services, property. It doesn't, there's no there's no way to subtotal it that way, but this provides you with each of the object codes and all of the the balance information here. So I wanted you to just be able to see what can come out of the system, and I don't know if you prefer one over the other, or if you prefer both. But I wanted to sort of open that up to see your thoughts on the iVision's version.
Is everybody able to find that in their packet? The iVision's one is the one that says General Ledger Elementary Summary Report on the top. It just follows the format that you're used to seeing.
So, Heather Petty Butcher. So my personal preference is yours with the blue and it's by category, right? This is just all expenditures, without categories in it down. However, as long as they're completely the same, you know what I mean? So if the numbers are, which I know on these are, if they're always the exact same, then I don't. If it's, for some reason it's different, then I don't know why it would be, but.
Yeah, they're never gonna be different.
Okay, if they're never different, I want yours, personally. But it's the will of the board, so whatever, people want both or one or the other.
Yeah. Madam Chair, I would prefer Caitlin's, or Ms. Okay. That is easy to do. So I don't really have much to say about that, about the figures in there, just because it's so early in the year, but we will continue on with the report template as you had before. And then the last item I have for you is our transfer requests, and again, I apologize, I didn't put negative values in the sum of decrease requested, and then it just made the last column look terrible. So this is corrected with our transfer requests. And my report over here sort of provides a narrative of each of those items. I can just answer questions if you have them about specific transfers on here. But I will note the very final bullet, which is category 1130, you won't see that on the transfer request, and that's because we're just transferring funds between 3 different account codes within the 1130 category, so that's something that doesn't require board approval. But I just wanted to let you know of a shift that will be happening. Dr. Baird and I spoke with the admin team around subutilization and what are
number of subs required daily and the benefit of having the building subs, and it really sounded like having a consistent person in the building, 4 days a week was really helpful because that person really got to know the students and the staff, and some of the, the routines of the school, and they know that they have at least 2 vacancies a day that they're filling, so that person would be utilized all the time if we were to add an extra building sub. So we're looking to shift funding from the like regular subline to the building subline. So we're not adding any money or taking any money away of the substitute category, but just moving it and adding on a 0.8 FTE at each school, probably starting in and around October.
So this is a change from your budget book and what your FTE count were in your budget book. But we felt like we tried the building subs this year. We found it was really successful. They're paid the same rate as a daily sub. Correct me if I'm wrong, because I feel 99.9% certain of that.
Mm-hmm.
All right, good.
Yep.
So it doesn't change the dollar amount being spent. But it would be a change from your initial budget approval. So we wanted to make sure you were aware of it before we moved forward with that.
That's the question.
Yeah.
Go ahead. So the 2 permanent building subs,
Correct.
basically one in each school.
Yep.
Health insurance?
No.
Okay.
Because they're both 0.8, and so it's a completely non-benefited position.
Uh-huh.
The only thing that they're guaranteed is they're guaranteed to have 4 days a week that they're coming in to sub. So otherwise, it's the same as a regular daily substitute, except they know that they're guaranteed 4 days a week. So for someone who's looking to sub consistently, it's an attractive position. Especially for an aspiring teacher or perhaps a retired teacher but still wanted to come in. But at this point, we know that I think that we have one returning most likely. One had left at the end of the year to go be a teacher. So that's sort of the goal, right? Is that these people come in and they grow into teachers.
Right.
And so we'd have the 2 openings. That's what we're saying. We probably wouldn't hire the second one until October, because that tends to be more when the classes might start out. But I've empowered the principals, as long as there's no concerns from the board tonight, that if they have an excellent candidate, they have 2 excellent candidates, then we'll lock them both in. So the hiring will sort of be dependent on the applicant.
Right, I'd just be a little afraid if we wait till October that some of the individuals that might be interested in having experience, might do that elsewhere.
No, I agree. That's what we're going to sort of do it on a case-by-case basis. Yeah.
So are there any questions about the transfer requests, report? That would require a vote.
So can I have a motion to approve the line item transfers as presented?
So moved.
Joe Zuzell, Ally Schweigel, second. Is there any discussion?
Ally Schmeigel, Amanda Veneziano, aye. Heather Pettit,
Aye.
Joe Zuzell,
Joe Zuzell, aye.
Joe Margaitis.
Joe Martinez, aye.
All in favor, motion passes.
All right, thank you.
It for me.
All right. Thank you so much. So now is the chair's report. So before, just read our statement on the mask. I do want to speak to what Dr. Baird mentioned earlier, and that is the building committee is going to make, in the same way that they did for the Hebron leg remediation project, a subcommittee in regard to roofing. To look at our roofs and figure out the best plan going forward for roofs at both schools. So they're looking and they need board representation on that committee. So I would ask if anyone's interested. And I will say I was going to ask Joe Margaitis as being the resource management chair, if he would be one of those people.
Yes, I will.
He's like, wait, I think it's-
I didn't get off mute.
Okay. All right, is there anyone else interested? Because they, I'm happy to serve, but if somebody else, with Joe, but if somebody else wants to, certainly, please let me know. All right, they're all.
Looks like it's you, Heather.
They're all volunteer ones. All right. So Joe, Margaret, and myself will serve on their subcommittee. So I will let the building committee know. There is the policy committee as well. So we now are without a chair for the policy committee because Mr. Pettit resigned. So I don't know if somebody's interested in being the chair of the policy committee. I'm also happy to take over the role of chair until the fall when we do elections and committee assignments. After the election, I'm happy to do it in the interim. If there's somebody else, again, is interested, please let me know.
I just, not interested, just a comment. You have been sitting on that.
Yes.
So I think it would just be best if you just continue because you guys have made so much headway. So it would be great if you could continue.
All right, so seeing no other volunteers, I will chair the policy
Sorry, I love
committee.
my other committees.
That's all right, I do sit on it anyway, so I'm there anyway, so it's fine, I don't mind at all. So I will do that at least until, elect officers and new committee chairs in November, December.
Heather, I'm on it with you, so I'm happy to help in any way, certainly. But
Yeah.
I love my other committees too, so I don't want to overcommit, that's all.
And we did get a lot of work done, so it's
Yeah.
not, we don't have a lot pending right now.
Yeah.
Except maybe updates from the state as they come down.
Yeah.
All right.
And a lot of those I can just do.
Okay. Yes. Chair Stone?
Yes.
So in regard to that, the board met, we had a retreat at the end of July for 2 nights. A part of that was to discuss, COVID, and the fall school year. We also consulted with the attorney in regard to what parameters, the board had at this moment legally. So I just wanted to read a statement in regard to masking, because I know that's a lot of people are wondering about that on both sides of the issue. So I'd like to address the question as to whether students and faculty will be required to wear masks in school for the upcoming school year. It is important to note that relevant federal and state laws and guidance related to COVID-19 pandemic continue to evolve as they have since the beginning of the pandemic. So on July 19th, 2021, Governor Lamont issued Executive Order Number 13. I'm just going to read a little bit of the legal piece just so for the record and so everyone knows kind of where the board's liability is. The Executive Order Number 13 extended a handful of executive orders through September 30th, 2021, including but not limited to Executive Order Number 9, Section 1, which authorizes the Commissioners of Early Childhood and Education to issue binding guidance, rules, or orders for the operation of schools or childcare settings that each deems necessary to respond to the COVID-19 pandemic. Executive Order 13 also extends Executive Order 12A, which requires masks regardless of vaccination status in certain settings where the risk of COVID-19 transmission is higher or where the population within such settings faces a greater risk of severe health effects from COVID-19 and requires the Commissioner of Public Health to issue rules for the wearing of masks in such settings. So Executive Order 12A provides in relevant part, the Commissioner of Public Health shall issue a rule setting forth a comprehensive list of facilities, venues, and other locations where masks and cloth face coverings are required, and will amend said rule as the Commissioner determines is warranted by public health conditions. The Commissioner of Public Health's rule right now makes clear that all individuals, regardless of vaccination status, must continue to wear a face covering mask at all times when worn inside public or private school buildings, pre-K to 12. So in light of the foregoing, face coverings are still required inside school buildings regardless of vaccination status through September 30th, 2021. We are anticipating that the Connecticut State Department of Ed and/or the Connecticut Department of Health will be publishing updated guidance on the topic in the coming weeks. The board and the superintendent of schools continue to closely monitor the legal landscape regarding decisions about school reopenings in the fall of 2021. Unfortunately, we do not have any definitive guidance from the state to share this evening. However, we anticipate such guidance in the coming days. In recent news articles, the governor has promised to provide such guidance for public schools several weeks before children return to classrooms. As soon as the board receives such guidance, we will convene a special meeting to interpret and deliberate on such guidance. Thank you all for your patience as we continue to navigate these difficult and uncertain times. So, the board, we can call a special meeting. I can call a special meeting within 24 hours. We can tentatively schedule one if it's the board's will tonight, or we can wait to see when that guidance comes out. We could tentatively schedule one, and if our legal liability doesn't change by that date, we could always cancel it and reschedule if our liability changes. So my thought was the week of August 16th. He said within 2 weeks, so maybe that would be, maybe we would hear something that week, and if not, again, we could postpone. So I don't know if the 19th would work. I know Dr. Baird is on vacation that week. I'm sorry for that. We could also wait until he returns and do it, on Monday, the 23rd. There's nothing that says we have to do it on a Thursday. Or do it any day of the week. So I just asked what the board's.
Just as a board member, the 23rd is better for me.
Ally Schmidt's a board member. I mean, as soon as we're able to, right? I just feel like as soon as we can have answers for families, the better. So that's my general answer about that. I'll make myself available. But certainly the sooner the better. All right.
Being as a board secretary, I do agree that the sooner the better. However, things have been changing rapidly, so I would hate to have a meeting and be able to make a decision, and then something, cases uptick and have to change it again. So I personally like the 23rd because I do think Dr. Baird should be present for that.
I agree. I would like Dr. Baird to be present. I will say I would also, if it does come to the board through the state that we are allowed, I use that word loosely, my own word, allowed, to make that decision, or if the onus is on the Board of Education, put it that way, to make that decision where I'm asking, that I would ask, I think we spoke to this too as a board at the retreat, but ask, Russell Melman, the Chatham Health Director, to also join us. That way, if we have any questions or we need to make any requirements around masking, percentages or whatever it might be, he could help us do that, and we should do that in concert with him. Shows us up.
No, I was just agreeing.
Ah,
I know Russ is on vacation this week, but I'm happy to reach out to him next week and just ask him if he's available on the 23rd and to sort of hold the time. Do you know what time it would probably be?
I think it would be in the evening because we all work during the day.
Typically, your special meetings start at 6, but.
Joe Margaitis, does the 23rd work for you?
Yeah, Joe Margaitis. So I agree that we should have, as soon as we have official word on what Governor Lamont is planning, I would like to have a special meeting as soon as possible, and obviously we want to make sure we have the right players in the room. You know, to Amanda's point, we never know what's changing, it is somewhat of a moving target, and I think part of, you know, what we would be discussing, and what Chad Health would bring is, you know, what would happen if those numbers were to change, you know, what's the guidance at that point. August 23rd would work, I just would prefer to meet earlier if possible, just because the parents want to know, we know, obviously, the parents that were present tonight, the ones who are watching on the channel as well, the live stream is a very big issue. We want to make sure that, you know, we're giving the right guidance.
Right.
Madam Chair, could we, Board Secretary, as Dr. Baird stated, our meetings normally start at 6 for special meetings. Is it possible to do that on the 23rd? I did realize I do have another meeting at 7:30 in town that same evening.
6 is fine.
The 6 work. Joe, Margaret, does 6 o'clock work for you?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. Could I get interested?
All right, so we'll schedule a special meeting for 6 PM on Monday, August 23rd. With the intention, because it's a special meeting, so we can't add anything to the agenda, so it would be specifically to make decisions regarding masking and maybe other COVID requirements, although I don't see that happening, but it could be farther. That being said, for the public and also, as Joe mentioned, folks in the room and listening, if the board's liability has not changed at that time, it's possible that that meeting will be postponed. Or we'll put a statement out either through Dr. Baird and through Messenger or on our website or both. All right, and that's all I have for the chair's report. The board liaison report, they weren't able to be with us this evening, Diane or Gail Richmond. So we can give it to committee updates. Policy committee, I don't believe that we have met. Joe Margaret's resource management committee.
We did not meet, although we should get something on the schedule, I'm thinking for next meeting.
Okay, the next regular meeting.
Yeah, Dr. Bear, are you okay with the usual time? I think we're doing 6 PM prior to the meeting?
Sure, so before the September meeting, you mean?
Yeah,
Sure, just send me, you know, like ideas for the agenda.
perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. Chair Zuzell, student growth and
Did
vision
not meet.
advancement.
Did not meet.
Amanda Veneziano, communications and community engagement.
Did not meet.
And you're up again, PTA.
PTA, the PTA is moving forward for this year. They do now have 2 co-presidents, one for each school is my understanding, and they're going to be working closely together. So this year they will have, do the best they can like they did last year. They did a great job, with COVID. So this year, hopefully they'll be able to do more things.
Education Foundation.
Dr. Fair, do you want to?
I don't have anything to share tonight.
Okay. All right. School readiness. And again, I know I am the person on school readiness, but it needs when I'm still at work. So if there's somebody ever that can do it, it's like right at 3:30. That'd be good. All right, so we'll make that change and we'll make Amanda Veneziano the liaison for school readiness. Thank you. Wellness Committee, Ally Schweigel.
Nothing.
And Shared Services Advisory Group, we have not met. There's a lot of people going on vacation with end of school. Most of our partners on the advisory group asked that we postpone. They also had some, things going on in their boards. So we will look to possibly reschedule in the fall, not right away, but after school opens a little bit. So I don't know, Joe, I'm thinking like in the fall sometime, October, November, but before budget.
Yeah, I completely agree.
Okay. Thank you. Next is old business, so we have preschool. I know Mrs. Ariano is not here, but do you have an update on numbers by any chance, Dr. Gray?
I do not have an update on numbers related to preschool. I will say kindergarten is at 104 right now. So
Wow.
we need to watch kindergarten closely. But we're still feeling that we have the right number of teachers. We don't anticipate 5 more enrollments for the school year, but we continue to watch that carefully.
Okay.
But the team has been meeting over the summer at the board's request to look at preschool options for into the future to expand or enhance preschool. We plan to present our preliminary findings, if you will, at the September board meeting. It'll probably be the district advancement update, will be preschool and enhancement ideas. And then we imagine there could be some questions and follow-up we want that we could then discuss at the October meeting. But we know when we're going into budget development, what the sort of final configuration for preschool might be. That's kind of the timeline we had talked about before, so we feel like we are on schedule to deliver that.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions in regard to preschool? All right, next on the agenda is new business. Is there any new business that I'd like to see at the regular meeting agenda in September? All right. Board member comments. Joseph.
Joseph, board member, I just wanted to thank all the members of the public for sharing their thoughts with us via email, in person. It's really important that you feel comfortable to share that information. We take in all of the information that people share with us. I don't want to speak for the board, but personally, I really enjoy hearing from families in the community. That is really important for us to hear, and I really acknowledge all the individuals who came forward and felt like that they could share.
Randy Musano, board secretary. I just also the same would like to echo that. It's great to have people come out and to share, and just please understand that, we are here for the safety of everyone. So while we appreciate it, just keep everyone's minds be open, and that we do appreciate and understand everyone's opinions and views. And just truly would like to thank the staff and Dr. Baird for last year was so successful. I know this year is going to be just as successful, if not more, and just all the hard work that has gone into curriculums and STEAM and PE, and just all the work that's getting done. It's summertime, and so much work continues to get done, and that's just Dr. Baird's leadership. So just truly thankful for him.
Yeah, I'm just going to echo what Joe said. Thank you so much for saying that, Joe. I think, thank you to everyone who made public comment in person tonight, who sent in emails. I often get asked, do you see the emails? Do you read the emails? And I tell them, yes, we do. We can't, respond to the emails, but we absolutely, I'll speak for myself, and I have full confidence of the rest of the board. We read the emails. We love the emails. We want to hear from families. We want to hear from community members. I recently, someone was telling me, I don't have a child currently in school. So I said, it doesn't matter. You're a taxpayer. We want to hear from you. We care about your perspective as well. So please, please know how much we appreciate it. And thank you so much.
And I will agree with that. And I will say, and I think that's an important point that Ms. Meisel made, that we do read all of the emails. We cannot respond because we are a board. And so it's, our regulation that we are, all 7 of us would put out a statement if we respond to any, so that if you're ever wondering why we don't respond, then that is why. It's not an individual response when you're on a board. But I do know that everyone here and on the board does read every single email. I know Dr. Baird does respond, I believe, to almost every single one.
Almost every single one.
Yes. As he can. So, but I do thank everyone that came out, that wrote emails, and we do know how hard this is and how important it is also to parents and So we'll see what the future holds. And board member comment.
Yeah, Joe Margaitis. So I'm going to echo essentially what everyone just said. I am very pleased to see the community outreach here, and hearing, besides the letters that have been written, which we do read, and Heather, you brought up a great point, we cannot respond to those, but it should be known that we hear you and we are listening. So I'm very pleased to hear everyone's opinions, and everyone's opinion matters, and it's weighed very heavily. So I certainly appreciate it. And again, I'm encouraged to hear the community is involved and coming at this with the right approach. So thank you to everyone in the community. And also one more thing, I didn't know we did a YouTube live feed.
Yes.
So I've been watching this meeting, and it's pretty cool to see you all without you all seeing me. So.
Creeper.
And I will speak to that as well. I did ask Mr. McKinney, and it is, people are in the room, but also hearing, it is on our website, the YouTube link, and it's under the calendar as well. So obviously, if you're listening to me on YouTube, you already know that. But maybe it's something we can let folks know too, at least like some kind of the next communication that goes out just in general about from the board, and we can let people know.
There's some late breaking news. I was like, could I share that real quick here?
Yes, of course.
So the governor has made some statements about mask requirements, but in particular to superintendents, it's been noted none of it applies to schools for the fall. That's still not coming for another couple of weeks or so.
Thank you.
So
My
anything
phone
you
is
see
buzzing.
tonight
Oh my
does not
God,
apply to
crazy.
schools. I don't know what it is tonight because I've been here and I don't say anything like that.
Yeah,
So
thank you.
And yeah,
Like, yeah, my phone's blowing up over here because of.
So whatever that is, I don't know. I've read it.
Yeah,
but it's good
Does
to
not apply
know.
schools.
Thank
It's good
you.
to
Thank you
know
for
it
saying
doesn't
that.
apply to us, because then we won't have to
Yeah.
email you at midnight. Okay. All right, and so with that, can I ask for a motion to adjourn?
Someone.
Josie, Schmeisel, second. Any discussion? Roll call.
Ally Schmeisel.
Hi, Elsa Lester.
Amanda Veneziano, aye. Heather Pettit.
Aye.
Joe Zuzel.
Joe Zuzel, aye.
Joe Margaitis.
Joe Margaitis, aye.
All right, we are adjourned at 8:58 PM. Thank you all.